So did the Obama administration orchestrate a political hit job, basically spying on the president and his campaign as he was taking office? Well, it's a powerful allegation, and when I spoke with the president himself, he didn't pull any punches. As a matter of fact, he went even further, bringing up the T word, treason. Here's a clip of that exchange.
On Obama and the spying situation, this idea that they were spying on your campaign, you've been asked before about what crime he would have potentially committed. But I remember you talking to Doug
treason.
Reed. Well,
Treason.
That's what I was going to ask you.
It's treason. Look,
it's treason.
Look,
okay. That's
when
what
I came out a long time ago, I said they've been spying on my campaign. I said they've been taping, and that was in quotes, meaning a modern-day version of taping. It's all the same thing, but a modern-day version. But they've been spying on my campaign.
That always kind of makes me laugh. Treason, treason. Of course it was treason. That's typical Donald Trump. All right, joining us now to talk about this and more is former acting director of national intelligence and the former U.S. ambassador to Germany, Rick Grenell. Rick, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and congratulations on guest hosting.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm looking for the check. I'll let you know if it ever arrives. I appreciate it. Hey, look, you just heard the president say former President Obama committed treason. What do you say about something like that?
Well, look, let's look at the facts. What we have now come to realize after looking at classified information that was declassified, by looking at emails that Susan Rice sent to herself on Inauguration Day, is that this time period between Election Day and Inauguration Day, when we are supposed to be having a peaceful transition of power, we now know that the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden at the time, was in January, just weeks before the election, looking for information, manipulating intelligence, and now we also know that some of that manipulation, political manipulation of intelligence, was leaked half-heartedly to reporters. And so I don't think that you can come to any other conclusion other than this past administration, the Obama administration, weaponized intelligence. There's a lot of charges that people politicize intelligence. And let me be very clear. I think that it's terrible when either the Republicans or the Democrats weaponize, politicize intelligence, when they take raw intelligence and they put it out there like it's verified. Intelligence is an estimate, and it needs to go through a process of being verified. Anyone who leaks raw intelligence for political purposes should be condemned. And if reporters take that information and somehow use it publicly, the people who provide that information are violating the law, and they should be punished.
Real quick, Rick, he's implicating, though, of course, the President of the United States, saying treason. Is that over the line, or is that too much?
Look, I agree with President Trump, because when you look at Susan Rice's own words, again, she emailed herself on Inauguration Day, the Inauguration Day of President Trump. She emailed herself after the 12 o'clock time period when President Trump was now the president. She was still at the White House, and she sent an email to herself under the Trump presidency. And she used words, again, emailing herself to almost redo history, to try to come up with a justification for why they just spent 3 or 4 months unmasking names, why we had these charges where they were talking about Russian collusion. Yeah. David, what we know is that all of these charges of Russian collusion on television, when these individuals were asked under oath, you can go to the transcripts, every single one of them under oath during the House Intelligence Committee meetings said, I don't have any evidence, I don't see anything. Right. So a public pronouncement is not the same as what they're saying under oath. Look, where I come from, outside of Washington, that's called lying.
You know, speaking of the Michael Flynn case, you're the one who declassified the list of names from the Obama era, those seeking to unmask Michael Flynn. Vice President Joe Biden was on that list. He was asked about that and said he only knew about the fact that he was being investigated, that Michael Flynn was being investigated. But recently, unsealed documents would suggest that Vice President Joe Biden at the time was actually the one who suggested the investigation of Michael Flynn. Do you buy that he didn't know anything beyond the fact that he was being investigated?
I may buy that he doesn't remember because he seems to have a very short memory right now, but I don't buy that he didn't know. And Susan Rice's email is clear. Again, she wrote an email to herself on the inauguration day of President Trump about a meeting that had taken place a week or two before. That is suspect. That is suspicious. And anyone who looks at the facts can immediately say that Susan Rice was up to something. She was covering tracks. She was trying to redo history on what had been transpiring over the last couple of weeks. Look, I have to go back to this point because I think it's a really good point. We have an election day in November and an inauguration day in January. That's a transition period. The reason why there's a gap is because we're the greatest country in the world with serious policy issues, and we have to have a peaceful transition of power to hand off to the next administration. So I think this is the period where I focused on, because we know who the president is, and the team that is currently in office clearly was up to no good when it came to looking at what Flynn, the incoming national security advisor, was doing. He was talking to foreign leaders, which is exactly what he is supposed to do. And by the way, I encourage your viewers to go read Susan Rice's transcript, which is on the DNI website and is publicly available, because she will admit in her transcript, she and Samantha Powers both say that they, during their transition from Bush to Obama, they were planning and talking to world leaders and having meetings. They did that once they were known in November to have won the election when Obama won. President Bush is still the president until late January, and they are preparing. The Bush team didn't have any problem with that. We know who the next president is. We're trying to have a peaceful transition of power. These are important transition periods, and we shouldn't have the administration that's in power surprised by the fact that the Trump team won, angry by the fact that the Trump team won, and then we find ourselves on Inauguration Day. Let me make one more point.
Sure.
On Donald Trump's Inauguration Day, 67 Democrats, 67, refused to go to the inauguration. They refused to have a peaceful transition of power celebration. And let me tell you, as someone who's worked at the State Department for 11 years, if that would have happened in another country, we would have condemned it. We would have said, stop being crybabies, stop being sore losers, go to the inauguration and show a peaceful transition of power. This is not the way the United States opposition party should be behaving.
Hey, Rick, we got about less than a minute left, so good luck with this question on John Bolton. What was the relationship like that you had with him, and what did you think of the book when it came out? Do you see that as betrayal to this country, to this administration?
Well, David, as you know, I served at the UN for 8 years, worked for 4 different ambassadors, and John Bolton was there 1 year of my 8 years, and I got to work very closely with him during that 1 year. John was somebody who I thought was going to focus on the fact that whoever is the president of the United States gets to make the policies. But clearly when he was national security advisor, whether it was Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, or Kosovo, Serbia, which are issues that I work on very closely, he did his own policy. He had his own ideas, and they were opposite of what President Trump wanted. And so I think that the onus is on him to explain why he was undercutting the president of the United States. I haven't read the book, but I think it's shameful for him to come out and do all of this talking later on. And he should have spoken up, and then after speaking up and stating his position, walked out of the Oval Office and implemented the President of the United States' policy.
Rick Grenell, great conversation, great insight. Really appreciate you joining us here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, we've got former Democrat Senator Joe Lieberman here to break down the FBI's latest accusation of China being the biggest threat to the U.S. Stick around.